Good evening. Welcome to Divine Speech in African Traditionalism. I am your host, Augustine Ayinbisa Ayala. I rise before my father and my mother, the two individuals that I looked up as my God and Goddess. I rise before my grandfather and my grandmother, whom I call my ancestors. I rise before the land deities, the water deities, and the sky deities. I rise before the goddesses and the gods. And finally, I rise before the Supreme Being, whom my tradition calls Nawene. With this prayer, I know I'm permitted to speak. I have a retraction to make. Before I introduce my guest, there's a retraction that a serious mistake I made the last time. In the summation of my last show of Power with Responsibilities, I made a serious mistake by including Ghana as a non-permanent member of the Security Council. This was what I said. Quote, "The deplorable decision that was taken by these three members, the three non-permanent members of the Security Council, Gabon, Nigeria, and Ghana, to allow Europe to invade Africa once more is something beyond comprehension." Close quote. This was a slip of tongue. This is what I meant to say. Gabon, Nigeria, and South Africa. My sincere apologies to the government of Ghana for including her in a vote she did not cast. Now back to my guest. Mr. Junior Jawara Blake is the founder of the Health Tea Endeavors Corporation. Health Tea Endeavors Corporation manufactures the Wood Root Tonic, Dr. Bed Bitters, and Herbal Harmony 555. And that is not all. He is also the founder of Vision Delight, LLC, at 3565B Boston Road in Bronx, New York. He's a veteran radio broadcaster, WVIP 93.5 FM. Health is here Saturday mornings from 6 to 8 a.m. and Sunday mornings 7 to 8 a.m. And the meeting in the African Village Square, Saturday midnight from midnight to 3 a.m. Mr. Jawara Blake, welcome to Divine Speech.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, Mr. Ayala.
How do you do these things? How do you manage all these things?
Well, I'm committed to our people in a very sincere and passionate way. And in my commitment, I really want to work towards the transformation of our people. You know, we have been through a lot, especially in the last 500 years. And due to the abduction of our people from Africa, our enslavement here in the diaspora, as well as when you look at Africa, you look at the conquest of Africa and the colonization of Africa, you see what it has done to us. I am absolutely committed to changing all of that. My own experience and education has taught me that we have a responsibility to do something about that. And so I've committed my life towards this work. And so you'll notice that everything that I'm involved in, whether it's the health of our people or the empowerment of our people, it's all geared towards transformation through transitional diet.
Raising the standard of living for our people.
Indeed.
Good. Now back home in my tradition or in my area of setting, the medicine man is called Tindana, like medicine owner. So the medicine owner can be a woman, can be a man. But in my area, normally the medicine owner gets instructions from a higher authority. And that tells that person that if you mix this and mix that, you can cure this ailment. How do you come by your invention?
Well, I wish I had the, the abilities that the medicine owner had. I wish I could even claim to be a medicine owner. But my own experience comes from my elders, and as well from my teachers, both my conventional education as well as my alternative. I call it an alternate education because in my study of microcosmic science, that comes totally outside the scope of conventional training. But out of that experience, I've learned, I've observed sickness,
Right.
and I've observed poor people being sick. And that has something that has always inspired me to heal ever since I was a child, because I actually grew up near the entrance to a hospital.
Right.
Yeah, so that inspiration has been a part of me, and because of that desire, I have been blessed to meet and to be in touch with people who have taught me along the way. So when you look at my formal education, you can see that my agenda in school has always been directed towards healing.
Right.
And by the same token, in my search for healing, especially in inspired by my own mother's illness, I discovered a very, very great healer who taught me a lot. His name is Dr. Ignatius. He's not with us anymore. He's with the ancestors. May his soul rest in peace. But he was very instrumental in helping me to put together everything through the study of what we call microcosmic science, the study of the elements. Through that study, I was able to combine my conventional or formal knowledge of chemistry, biology, zoology, so forth, botany, with understanding how the elements work in our body community, in our environment, and in our foods. So out of this experience, I have created formulas and can create many, many formulas, and I've also learned how to apply herbs to healing people as well, healing diseases and ailments.
Oh, I see. You know, the last time you and I met, we discussed a lot of things about the situation in Africa, the balkanization in Africa, especially in the Sudan and Ivory Coast, Somalia. But quite recently, the world have taken an aim at Libya, and they're basically trying to bomb Libya back to the Stone Ages. What is your take on that?
Well, basically, the assault on Libya, is basically something that we've been expecting for a while. I mean, actually, we never knew it would take that form, that Libya would be the centerpiece. But clearly, if you look at what Muammar Gaddafi represents to Africa, if you look at what he has been doing with the Libyan economy, basically he has been at the forefront of the movement for the unification of Africa, or the operation of one government in Africa. And of course, part of that includes a military strategy whereby Africa would finally be able to defend themselves, because right now Africa is defenseless. We've been defenseless for probably the last 2,000 years or so. Obviously, the movements that are going on in Africa with the formation of the African Union, so forth, so on, represents a threat to the West. We have to recognize this. And it's something that black people all over the world are not recognizing, that Africans have been made the enemies of Europeans for several reasons. One, we have the resources that they need. They do not want to pay for it.
Right.
And by the same token, they've used our labor, meaning our human resources, to enrich themselves and to develop their economies. They can't afford to stop that now. And so it's not Libya that they want to beat back into or to bomb back into the Stone Age. It's African people. So people need to recognize, black people need to recognize that the assault on Libya is an assault on every African everywhere
on the entire continent.
On the planet. I go beyond the continent, the planet.
My goodness. I recently read an article in the New York Amsterdam News. And an article was written by the president of Uganda, Museveni. And the article, in a nutshell, actually, which was like telling Gaddafi that, he got what he asked for. Could an African leader treat another African leader the way Museveni? Normally, I don't care if a leader is asked a question, a reporter throws a mic in front of a leader and say, what's your comment on such and such a thing? But here's a case whereby this man wrote an article critical of a fellow African leader. Is this done?
Well, you see, what is that Africans, especially the post-colonial era, there was a time when African people knew what freedom was. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we only knew what freedom was when we were in bondage. Like, for example, here in the diaspora, when we were in chattel slavery, we understood what freedom is. Now that the white man has declared that we are emancipated, somehow we have forgotten who we are. We have lost sight of our objectives. Mm. And this is the reason why, people who you describe as leaders, but they really are not leaders. They're really, I like to call them overseers of Western interests in Africa, because that's what they are. And this is what we need to change. People need to recognize that these are not leaders. Leaders would be standing up for African interests, would make African interests our priority, or their priority, and that's what they would defend. If they were acting in that manner, then they could not make statements like the one that Museveni made.
And I will have to read this. On April 15, 1958, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah made this statement. Today, we are one. If in the past the Sahara divided us, now it unites us. An injury to one is an injury to all.
Indeed.
Today we have African Union, which Gaddafi actually brought to being. Gaddafi is more African than Arab. Mm-hmm. And if you check, the Arab nations also voted for Gaddafi to be removed. My question is, with the African Union voting for the no-fly zone to be enforced in Libya, what does that tell us about our independence, these 53 years of independence that we cherish?
Well, I'd say it confirms what I said before, that these are not our leaders. These are individuals who follow an elitist system of supporting other people's interests in our own country. You see, through elitism, they have elevated people who are selfish in their ambitions. They have elevated them to positions of leadership through the kind of manipulations that the colonial system has put in place. We need to recognize that Africa has truly never ever enjoyed or experienced independence. If we did, it was for a very, very brief period of time. Since then, through the kind of leaderships that have been imposed upon African countries, this has been taken away from us, and this is what we need to struggle against at this point in time.
But can you help me here? The hypocrisy of the world. Sudan is an African nation that, if Africa lacks resources, would need the rest of the world to help them to solve the problems in the Sudan.